Yes, that was a big deal. That was probably one of the main attractions. But he was something else that you might miss because you're not Jewish. At least I'm making the assumption this morning that you, like me, are probably not very Jewish. Verse 13, he says this, and he went out again by the seashore, and all the multitude were coming to him, and he was teaching them. They were coming to him because he was a teacher. In Jewish culture, there was this word, you might have heard it before, called rabbi. It was a position of significant honor in the Jewish culture. And people would always want to be around the rabbi to hear what it is that the rabbi would say, to see what it is that the rabbi would do given certain circumstances. That's why it's amazing when we get to 14, we see this. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting in the tax office, and he said to him, "Follow me." Now, we've seen a follow me passage before, and I'm not sure if it necessarily got hammered home as much as I want to hammer it home this morning, the significance of what occurs. Remember, the last time we heard the word follow me, he said it to some fishermen, and what did they do? They followed, right? They dropped their nets, and they followed him. This time, Jesus finds Levi, the son of Alphaeus. Now, you probably don't recognize that name. We come to know him later as Matthew. It wasn't uncommon for people to go through a name change when something significant had swapped out in their life. He's sitting in a tax office. This is significant. But it's significant that Jesus turned to somebody in a tax office and said, "Follow me," and the immediate response is he rose and followed him. Here's what I want you to understand about Jewish culture. When you were a little kid, as a Jew, education was crucial. But when you went to educate your child, it wasn't about the process of ensuring that your child knew the laws of physics or mathematics. Anybody know what it is that you'd only teach your kids? The Torah, the Old Testament. You went to Torah school. And as a result of Torah school, the goal of passing Torah school was not just, hey, get yourself a little sticker. It was to memorize the entirety of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. I can't even remember 5 phone numbers. 5 whole books of the Old Testament. That was for the common kids, right? Some kids, they didn't do it very well. That's fine. You weren't made that way. Go to work with your family, and you'd go learn the family trade, which was an honorable thing. But for those that could go on, they would. They'd graduate, and they'd go to the next level. What do you think the next level was? Well, you already memorized the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Hey, let's memorize the rest. Why not? The whole Old Testament. Why? Because it was crucial. Yahweh had told them, keep this stuff on your minds day and night. Meditate on it. Chew on it. You kind of have to know it if you're going to do that, right? Especially in a culture where you don't have books on your shelf. You got to memorize it. Now, you can assume that not everybody was capable of doing that, right? So then, only those that were capable of doing that moved to the next level. The next level was special. That's where you got assigned an apprenticeship to a rabbi. You would go to a rabbi because it was the rabbi that had already done all the same memorization that you did, but he knew what it meant and was going to teach you exactly what it meant to meditate on this stuff in such a way that you could really employ it and in turn teach it to other people. But just because you got your apprenticeship didn't mean that you passed your apprenticeship. It was only after a rabbi saw something specific inside of you, when you had been around him for a while and he saw what you were capable of it would only be at that special moment that you get to the highest level. And there was no graduation ceremony, no pomp and circumstance, no tassel turning. All it was the rabbi turned to you and said, "Follow me." That means that from that moment forward until the rabbi released you, you literally would follow him in every single footstep. There's funny stories told by Jews about followers of rabbis literally walking into the bathroom with the rabbi because they didn't want to miss anything that might happen in there. Seriously, that's how seriously they took it. Only the best of the best of the best heard those two words. Follow me. Who does Jesus say it to? A tax collector. Okay, think about this. Putting more in our Jewish hat. A tax collector? You're like the biggest of the sellouts that we can think of. Because remember, for Jews, one of the ultimate key concepts of the Old Testament was to remain as pure as possible. We don't want you getting defiled by the Gentiles. Yeah, we realize that you might have to go to the market and buy some stuff from the Gentiles. When you get back, you better make sure you go through some ritual purity washings. Otherwise, you are not the pure Jew you ought to be. Tax collectors, they worked for Gentile governments. They weren't just impure occasionally. They were impure every single day. You can imagine it would be hard to make friends with other Jews, right? And because you already couldn't make friends, well, if you can't make friends, might as well make money. It's already my job to tax you, but why don't we up that tax bill a little bit? You owe 15%? Let's make it 15.25%. Where's that quarter going? Me. Yay. I make more money. You already hate me. I might as well take money from you. You won't pay? I'll just call my Gentile bosses and they'll deal with you. And this day, a rabbi shows up in front of him and says, follow me. What's he do? What's he do? Not a trick question. He gets up and he follows him. Why? Do you think that at any point in his adult life, he thought he could hear those words? Do you think that there was ever any chance he knew he already couldn't do it? He's like the lowest of the low in Jewish society. He's not the best of the best of the best. He had already flunked out of school. Otherwise, he already would be with a rabbi. He gets told, follow me. And that's why he's like, okay. I don't know what you see in me. Because Jesus was weird. He was different. He wasn't the type of rabbi that you would expect to see. So what do they do next? Let's have a party. Why? Because Jesus was not the stuck-up person that you might think that he was. Hey, Levi, you've got money. Let's spend some. I'm hungry. So they go over to Levi's house. And it came about, verse 15, he was reclining at the table in the house, and look at who shows up to the party. The only people you would expect to see at a tax collector party. Who? Two groups of people. One, other tax collectors, right? They know what's up. And then who's the other category? Sinners. People who already don't fit into Jewish society. They've already got the black label on their forehead. They might as well hang out with the people that have the money. Maybe I can get some of that. Maybe they'll make it rain. Whatever the case is, this is not who you'd expect to be at a party with a rabbi. So, as a result, the other religious leaders, they react the way that you would think. Verse 16. When the scribes of the Pharisees saw that he was eating with the sinners and the tax gatherers, they began saying to his disciples, what the heck are you doing? Why is he eating and drinking with tax gatherers and sinners? Upon hearing this, Jesus said to them, it's not healthy people who need a physician. It's those who are sick. I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. The religious establishment called Jesus out on his lack of purity, but Jesus points out to them a concept that you probably have become familiar with if you've been following Jesus for a little while. Who, if you think about it, who in your life is the most ready to receive the message that says, hey, you're a mess and you need saving? It's probably only the people who are a mess, right? Because if you're anything like me in your story, probably the people that are the hardest to get convinced to follow Jesus are the people that are like, I got it nailed. Got a good job. My kids are relatively under control. Never murdered anyone, which seems to be the standard for most people. Got it together. I'm a nice person. I do good things. I've got the high five sticker on the back of my car or whatever it is. I got it nailed, right? Those who are a social disaster, they know they need saving. They know they're a mess. You don't have to convince them. The hardest people to evangelize are the good people. And Jesus turns to these outsiders, these outcasts, these ones that society wouldn't expect, and says, hey, come and follow me. Come be with me. Come hang out with me. Not the way that we would expect, because Jesus receives people who recognize their need for him. That's it. That's the qualifying standard. Not people who are good people. You don't have to clean your act up to come to Jesus. That's a beautiful thing. Jesus specifically stated, sick people need a doctor. I'm here. The doctor is in. Right? Jesus receives even the most unlikely of people. But because he's training the outsiders, he's going to train them differently. Jesus teaches religion differently. Look at starting in 18 here. And John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. And they came to him and said, hey, why did John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples don't fast? Jesus, why aren't you and your disciples fasting like we do? At this point, the Pharisees were known to fast twice a week. And one of the other speeches that Jesus gives to people, we know that everybody knew when the Pharisees were fasting, right? Because they would tell you that they were fasting before you even knew. Hey, watch out, fasting today. I might be a little hangry because I'm holy, right? Hashtag suffering for Yahweh. That's how they did it, right? And Jesus was like, hey, calm down. They're coming to him saying, this is religion as we know it. You're trying to teach people to be holy. Shouldn't you be doing what other holy people do? Jesus' response. Jesus said to them, verse 19, while the bridegroom is with them, the attendants of the bridegroom don't fast, do they? This is interesting, just by the way. This is rabbis. This is the way that rabbis talked. Do you notice how Jesus is always answering questions with questions? That was rabbi stuff. That was what rabbis did. So long as they have the bridegroom with them, they can't fast. Jesus turns to them and goes, look, I want you to think of a wedding. Now, some of you in here, you just love weddings. Love them. Everything about them. Not a giant fan, I'm going to be honest. And it's not because I don't appreciate what weddings are. I love what weddings stand for and feel that they ought to be celebrated. But I feel like there's so much like pomp and circumstances, and it's like people that you don't normally see in really nice clothes, wearing nice clothes somehow, and like special dances and weird traditions and the whole garter thing. I don't know what the heck that's about. And it's weird, right? But a Jewish wedding, the richer you were, the longer the party went. And I'm not talking like 4 or 5 hours. This is like sometimes a week, more than a week long. You're just hanging out in the house, eating, drinking, laughing, dancing. I might be able to once everybody calmed down a little bit, like in terms of all right, we don't have to all be formal and fancy. We're just going to hang out and eat. Okay, I can do that. I'm good at that. And Jesus says, at the parties that we go to for weddings, would it make any sense for us to show up and be like, we are not going to have any celebratory food or wine? No. It's a party. You have fun at parties. They're not somber affairs. You go and you relax and you let your hair down and you eat and you drink. And if you've ever done a Seder dinner before, a Jewish Seder dinner, that's like a Passover celebration dinner. That's a heck of a lot of wine that you drink in that party. Jesus' first miracle, making wine at a wedding because they had run out. Would it make any sense for us to be like, we're going to be the most holy version right now of ourselves. I'm not going to make any mistakes. I'm going to just calmly celebrate. That's not celebration, is it? And Jesus says it wouldn't make any sense. Right now, what's going on with me and my followers is they're with the source of all joy, and that is worthy of celebration. There's going to be a time when fasting would make sense. Verse 20, the days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they'll fast in that day. I'm not going to spend time talking about fasting this morning. I can guarantee that most of you probably have no clue of what fasting is all about. And most people, that's why I'm okay with not talking about it, because most people that were listening to Jesus say that, they didn't know what fasting was all about too, because they were doing it wrong. People didn't even understand why they were fasting. They just knew that the religious people did it, so I figure I should be doing it too. And Jesus calls them to understand their religious practices, the meaning behind those practices. Jesus turns to them and says, look, I'm going to have to teach these people, these outsiders, these unlucky, or these unlikely, I'm going to have to teach them in a way that you wouldn't expect. And then he gives a couple of examples, 21 and 22. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, and the new from the old, and the worst tear results. And no one puts new wine in old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and the skins as well. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. I'm going to assume that you, like me, hear these two examples and go, what? Okay, so more Jewish information here. Okay, ready? Number one. Not like us, when we have some type of clothing that rips or tears or stains, we ball it up and throw it away, right? But if you had, let's just say you had your nicest shirt ever, this is your favorite shirt. You would not want to get rid of this shirt if it tore, right? Have you seen, this is Lululemon, Brad? I cannot get rid of this shirt, right? It's got the little symbol so everyone knows. Okay? And it feels fantastic, right? That's not what this shirt is, by the way. I bought this shirt when I was in high school. You would fix it. If you'd want to keep your favorite shirt, you'd fix it. And that's what they would do. The problem is they didn't have polycotton blends at that point, right? Everything was like real natural biological fibers at that point. And if you take real natural biological fibers and you've washed them a few times, they go from like this big to like this big, right? So if you took that same type of fiber that hadn't been washed and you sew it in to fix your favorite shirt, not only is it not going to fix it right, the next time you wash it, the whole thing gets completely jacked up, and now you don't get your Lululemon shirt anymore. Jesus says, look, I can't take this new stuff and try to sew it into the old stuff. It's actually going to wreck both things. He says the same thing about wineskins. When wine was made, They would actually take it for its last fermentation process and put it in animal skin. The problem is, if you've ever tried to make wine before, wine off-gasses while it's doing its fermentation process. And if you put it in a skin that has already been stretched out, it would burst the skin. So you had to put it in a skin that was new so that it could kind of age and stretch with the wine. Jesus again saying, look, if I try with these people that already don't get what it is that you're trying to teach, and if I try to teach them the same way that you do, it's going to wreck everything. It's not going to work. And Jesus, despite the fact that he was a rabbi and there were so many expectations of what a rabbi was supposed to be in his culture, Jesus was willing to look at it and go, we got to go about this differently. Because the practices of the Pharisees had become more of the practices than the meaning, Jesus wanted to drive home this meaning. Now, Mark, who's putting together stories for us, these aren't necessarily in the book of Mark in chronological order, wanted to drive this home better for us so that we could see a more practical application, because you might not get the cloth thing or the wine thing. You could probably get this thing. So we're going to dive into the next section that Jesus starts to teach these new people differently because he sees the rules differently. Start in verse 23. It came about that as he was passing through the grain fields on the Sabbath, his disciples began to make their way along while picking the heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, see here, what they're doing is not lawful on the Sabbath. You're not allowed to do that. You can't do that, right? What were they doing? They're hungry. They're walking through grain fields and they pick stuff, which actually even if it's not your grain field, under Old Testament law, it's legal. You can do that. You can walk through someone else's field and grab stuff, and then they'd rub it together and you get yourself the little, call them what you want, city people, wheat berries, I don't know, you get something to eat and you can eat it. They're hungry. What was the problem? It was the Sabbath. Okay, I'm not going to have you flip around too much today, but this one I want you to see. Stick your finger in Mark and go to Exodus chapter 31. Exodus chapter 31. We're going to read starting in verse 14. Exodus 31:14. Therefore, this is in the Old Testament law. Therefore, you are to observe the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be... What? You guys are ready to say that one. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. For 6 days, work may be done. But on the seventh day, there's a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to Yahweh, to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath shall surely, that's hard, shall surely be put to death. So the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath to celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as what? What do your versions say here? I heard mumble. I heard covenant, though. That was important. Yeah, and a New American Standard, which is the version I'm reading, perpetual covenant, a covenant that will go on forever and ever and ever and ever. It's a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he ceased from labor and was refreshed. Okay, all right. Hold on. Think about this. Don't just read the text of Scripture. I want you to think about it, right? God wakes up one morning, metaphor. I think I'm going to do some creating today, right? Bada bing, bada bang, bada boom. 6 days, whatever that officially means, and you can get into the nerdy arguments over that 6 days he creates everything, and then on the 7th day he's like, time for the hammock. Why? Was it because he was exhausted? No. How did he create? Was he like, tree? No, he was like, tree. And forests that would blow your mind. Mountains. Stuff ruptures out of the core of the earth. You think he was tired? It takes more energy for you to yell at your kids than it did for him to create everything that you've ever encountered. So why did he rest? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing I do know. Part of that creation process, he made us. And he's like, hey, I want you to be like me. This is the way I made you. I know what's best for you. So one day a week, you're going to calm down. Notice the theme here? You're going to calm down. You're going to stop working. And it's going to be such a symbol for you that I know what is best for you and not you. That if you choose to be like, no, I can handle it. I can work 7 days a week. I'm an American. If you think you get to determine you, if you were Jewish, you had already, by doing that, said, I know better than Yahweh. You've already separated yourself, so we're going to get rid of you. You don't belong as part of us. That's how heavily God wanted to drill this in. I know what's best for you. The hammock. I really like that. As a father especially. Now, that was the undercurrent of what was going on. And because that was so crucial to understand for the Jewish people, the rabbis before Jesus made even more rules to ensure that you would not violate Sabbath. And it had gotten to the point that if you were walking through a field of grain and pick the heads of grain like you're allowed to do, and you clap them between your hands and do this, you are threshing wheat. Thou shalt not work on the Sabbath. And Jesus, in his very Jesus-y way, tells them to calm down. But he does it in a very rabbinical way, right? He asks a question. Verse 25. He said to them, haven't you even read what David did when he was in need and became hungry? He and his companions? How he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and he ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for anyone to eat except for the priests. And he gave it also to those who were with him. He immediately poses a question to them. Hey, I just want you, do you remember that story where David goes into the temple despite the fact that he's not a priest? I know he's like the ultimate Jew of Jew. He's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of Jews, right? He is the Jew. He's the Jew. He goes into the temple where he's not allowed to go. He goes over to the bread he's not allowed to even be near, and he uses it for num-nums and gives it to his people. You can't do that. That's special bread. Jesus says, you remember that passage, guys? And if you were a Pharisee standing there, you'd be like, well, yeah, but we don't really emphasize that one too much because it's kind of uncomfortable when we spend all of our time telling people to obey the law, and then we come to a part where we're supposed to teach them that the Jew didn't obey the law. Verse 27. Jesus was saying to them, here's what I need you to understand about the Sabbath, guys. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Jesus says to them, look, you don't understand anything about this Sabbath law. And you've made more laws about it that only prove that you don't understand what's going on. I told you, I don't understand exactly why God rested, but I can tell you that when he made us, he said, hey, you should because that's what I did. And I've made you that way. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Verse 28. Just in case 27 wasn't controversial enough, he just goes with 28. So consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Who made the Sabbath? Don't be afraid. Not a trick question. Safest answer in church. God. God made the Sabbath. Yahweh made the Sabbath and instituted it and said it was so important that you had to follow it. If you're going to be part of my people, you have to do this. And Jesus goes, yeah, I made it. If this was true, what Jesus just said, that would be like the ultimate of blasphemy, wouldn't it? You see, what Jesus makes in here is two assertions in 27 and 28. That keeping Sabbath was about recognizing man's relationship to God and accepting the way that God created us to be. In essence, allowing God to make the decisions that are best for mankind, not us making the decision in our short-sightedness and our inability to fully understand things. But even if you didn't understand that, if you didn't realize that, Jesus stands up in front of them and says, well, I'm the one that made it up. Now, we are going to get into chapter 3 here, but at the end of chapter 3, the last phrase of verse 6, I'm sorry, not the end of chapter 3, the last phrase of verse 6 of chapter 3, these people that are hearing this, their response is, we got to destroy this guy. We got to get rid of this guy. That's what the religious leaders were saying. His family members, if you jump over to 321, his own people heard this stuff, the stuff that Jesus was saying, and they went out to take custody of him. Dude, go get your boy. Grab that guy. Why? For they're saying he's lost his mind. No one questioned when Jesus said these things how significant they were. No one thought that you could just get away with just like throwing that out there. Yeah, I made the Sabbath and live. No one thought that. The religious leaders didn't think that. His own family were like, we got to take care of this. We have to handle this situation. Again, even every time we end up looking at Jesus, we are faced with the reality that this guy was either a brilliant con man, was a full-blown lunatic, full-blown crazy guy, or he knew exactly what he was doing, and there was something different about him that has never occurred before him and has never occurred since. Especially when you take in mind the information that I've shared with you, the people who he is saying this stuff to. And just in case you're not fully understanding exactly what Jesus has said, Mark drives it home a little bit further, the beginning of chapter 3. We're going to just read verses 1 through 6. So Jesus entered again into a synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. So rabbis, every time it was Sabbath, you could ensure that a rabbi was always going to be in the synagogue, because that's where the people were gathering to hear the word of God, were gathering to worship. But Jesus uses it as another opportunity to do things differently than you might expect. They were watching him, verse 2, because they knew something was going to happen. They wanted to see if he would heal. I'm sorry, I skipped an important part, didn't I? Verse 1, there was a man there with a withered hand. Think of it. I want you to see it in your mind. Some type of palsied hand that didn't quite work. I don't know how it got there. Remember, John shared really well last week the concept that in most Jewish minds, when people looked at that, they're like, that dude gets what he deserves, right? That was the way that they saw things. But they wanted to see if Jesus was going to heal him on the Sabbath in order that they might accuse him. And Jesus, verse 3, said to the man with the withered hand, man, we don't even get the guy's name. It's just defined by his condition. Because that's all that people saw, huh? Bearing in his physical appearance day to day, you get what you deserve. Jesus says to him, come here, rise, come forward. And with everybody looking at that guy and looking at Jesus, he turns to them and says, what? A question. Rabbi stuff. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm? To save a life or to kill? Finally, people are starting to figure it out. I'm not saying nothing. After looking around, see, how did Jesus react? He got angry. When I see things like this, it moves me because that's a real human reaction. That's not the painting of Jesus that always hung in the churches that I grew up in. That's a real reaction of like, oh my gosh, why don't you get it yet? He got angry. He was grieved at their hardness of heart. So he says to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. And we get nothing more on him. Nothing more. His entire life changed. In the blink of an eye. By words alone. Like the Creator God does. But the Pharisees went out and immediately began taking counsel with the Herodians against him. We've got to destroy this guy. Something has to be done about this guy. See, Jesus had this opportunity for another unexpected message and says to them, so what are the Sabbath rules? Why was the Sabbath instituted? And no one had the courage to answer. And so Jesus does what the Creator, healer God does and heals him, evoking a murderous response. When you come to Jesus, when you think about Jesus, who do you think you're dealing with? Y'all seen the same paintings that I did when I was a kid? European Jesus, light brown flowing hair, blue eyes, passive grin on his face, wearing a bed sheet, right? It's like yellow behind him because that yellow is the holy color or something. Looks soft, doesn't he? He doesn't look like the type of guy that could kick your butt. Most guys would probably look at that guy and be like, I could take that guy. I'm solid, right? Looks like a guy maybe you might be willing to ask him to babysit your kids because he looks safe, right? There's no edginess to him. Is that what Jesus was like? Did you get that impression of him in any of what we read this morning? No. If you think Jesus is some soft-spoken, safe space whose only mission is to fix your problems and make you feel good about yourself, you don't know Jesus. You don't know him. You never met him. Jesus was not safe. He didn't do the expected. His words were inflammatory and they caused visceral reactions in the people who heard them. He never hesitated to speak the truth, even when he knew it would get him killed. Instead of surrounding himself with the beautiful people, he was a rabbi. He could. He could gather the powerful people, the people that had everything about their life put together. He could have picked those people and said, hey, follow me. That'll make me more money. That'll make me more popular. He chose followers from the outcasts, the commoners, the socially unviable, not the ones you would invite to dinner at your house. In fact, if you saw me hanging out with the people that Jesus typically hung out with, you would raise your eyebrow at me and be like, did you forget what you do and what you stand for? Probably not the best people for you to be spending time with, Brad. And when he had those people around him, he did not teach them in ways that were expected or the conventionally accepted ways. When I look at stories like this, I'm forced to ask myself, am I more like my rabbi or more just like everybody else around me? You see, Jesus' invitation to me, to you, to y'all, we have to sanctify that word, bring it back. Every single one of you, is to follow him, to seek him, to study him, to learn from him, to be like him, to talk about him, to represent him to a world that needs him more than anything else they think that they need. And Jesus' message to us was that our time is short, the kingdom is at hand, and there are so many different ways that we can waste our time, aren't there? There are thousands of ways that we can become distracted by seeing things the way that the world would see them and pursuing things that the world would pursue. So the band's going to come up. I'll warn you now. I know that in preacher school you're supposed to pray at the end. I'm not going to pray at the end. Plus, I also don't like prayer as like a transition time where like you're supposed to pray, but we get to get ready for the next thing. Anyway, personal opinion. I'm going to finish today just in this very simple way. I'm going to pretend to be Jesus' voice. Now, I assume all the risk and responsibility associated with saying that I'm speaking for Jesus. In most cases, you should prepare to jump me and drag me out. But I'm willing to take a risk because I've spent so much time and energy trying to understand this man. And if he were standing before you now, I think I know what he would say to you. So I'm just going to speak the next few words, and I don't want you to hear me. I want you to hear him. Drop it. Drop your need to be perfect. Drop your need to be with the in crowd. Drop your need to be religiously squared away. Drop your need to care for the rules more than trying to understand what they mean. Drop it all and follow me. Join me. Be like me. Just follow me.
I just want that to marinate for a second. Let's stand together. Let's sing. Carissa, his mercy is more. Nate, are we unmuted? Helps if I plug in. I'm like, I don't hear anything. All right, I can hear now. Let's sing. It's the Lord, His mercy is more. Stronger than darkness, new every morn. Our sins, they are many. His mercy is more. What love could remember, no wrongs we have done. Omniscient, all-knowing, He counts not their sum. Thrown into a sea without bottom or shore. Our sins, they are many. His mercy is more. Praise the Lord. His mercy is more. Stronger than darkness, new every morn. Our sins, they are many. His mercy is more. What patience would wait as we constantly mourn. What Father so tender is calling us home. He welcomes the weak, the vilest, the poor. Our sins, they are many. His mercy is more. Praise the Lord. His mercy is more. Stronger than darkness. eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Lift our voices together, church. Praise holy. See you high lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. See you high lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Singing holy, 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 holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. One more time together. Singing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love so we sing holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Lord, you are magnificent and glorious. And Lord, we honor and praise you today. As we leave this place, Lord, may we be in awe of you. In our mind, in our hearts, in our strength, Lord. Lord, to look to you for wisdom. For indeed, you are the author and perfecter of our faith and our salvation. Lord, we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, friends, thanks for coming to sing. Thanks for coming to sit under the authority of God's word. May God's blessing be upon you. Take care.